Call the meeting to order. The recording and or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, which may capture images and sounds of this meeting. Roll call. Vladimir. Present. Jessica.
Here.
Ryan.
Present.
Shelley.
Present.
I'm here as well. Five. Please join us for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Board members, any comment on the agenda? Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Shelley, thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Shelley and a second from Brian. Motion. All in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Opposed, that passes 5-0. We met in closed session prior to this meeting, but no action is taken. Recognition of retiring employees at conclusion of the 2021-22 school year.
All right, so this is a big day to recognize quite a number of employees that are retiring and just some fantastic people that have served the district for so long. So we're going to have each of you come up as your name's called. I have a few things to say about you. They're all nice things. And I want to start with someone who's not here. Doug Core is currently a elementary grade PE teacher. Has worked in LASD for 26 years, which I did not realize. He has served many positions. He's taught 2nd, 4th, and 6th grade at Springer, Covington. Has taught PE at Almond mostly. And prior to that, he was a classified employee working at Springer. He was a tech specialist, math as well, and music and science. Back when we had those programs that we remember with classified folks supporting. So I want to wish Doug well. I'll see him later this week. But again, 26 years in LASD. All right, we're going to go alphabetically. So Mr. Dewberry, Jason Dewberry has taught in Los Altos for 30 years. At Loyola for a number of years, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, taught all the upper grades there, and then moved over to Block, teaching history as well as serving as the teacher in charge for the last 10, probably 10 years, 10 or 11 years after Jeff out. So Jason, 30 years is a long time. Appreciate everything you've done for our students in the district during that time. Thank you. Hey, Jason, will you just wait right over here standing? We're going to take a group shot.
Okay.
So you can awkwardly stand there for a little while. Next, we have Pat Corin. Another long-time Los Altos teacher, teaching at Block for, I'm not sure how long, I have the total, but
Total is District 32 at Block
since 94, so 32 years total. Taught elementary PE to start, and then moved over to Block and has taught PE and also teaches mathematics.
Correct.
And Pat's been a really big part of our negotiating team on the Los Altos Teachers Association team, but it's been just a pleasure to work with that whole time.
Thank you.
So Pat, thank you for everything you've done.
Yeah.
All right, Beth Leach. Beth has been here for 20 years. I know this because I hired Beth a long time ago, 20 years ago, as a kindergarten teacher at Almond Elementary School. That's taught kindergarten. She's taught 5th grade, 6th grade, was a STEM teacher as well. Even I even called in a favor, and she taught 6th grade up at Gardner Bullish for a year when we were in need. And then she moved to the district office as a coordinator in the curriculum and instruction office. Beth has served as the Los Altos Teachers Association president. And I'd say one of the bigger reaches she did for us was last year when she stepped into a very morphic situation and became the principal at our virtual school during the pandemic, where we didn't really have any rules or understand how it worked. But Beth did an incredible job rallying that team, those online owls for that year. So Beth, congratulations. Thank you. Wait. Pam Loebner. Pam has, well, Pam went to school in our district. And she's taught here for 36 years. 37?
37.
I missed one. I'll talk to my people. But Pam is so flexible. Taught almost all entirely primary grades. Taught special day class.
Special day I had 1st through 6th.
Yep. But it's taught transitional kindergarten. Kindergarten was a first teacher in our full day kindergarten program. 2nd grade as well at Springer, Loyola, Bullis Parissima, Almond, and Gardner Bullis. So Pam, you've done it all for us, and you certainly deserve this moment in the sun. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
All right, Dolores McQuilkin. All right, Dolores has been with us for 23 years in Los Altos. And just before I did, I had the good fortune of working with Dolores as a speech language pathologist when I was at Almond. She's been at Almond and Oak, Covington.
And 1 year at Egan.
The year, that's right, the year at Egan. I should remember that. But the students always speak so fondly of Dolores. I just remember that from my days at Almond, and you have helped hundreds and hundreds of others. So thank you very much, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brings us to the letter P. Roberta Pine. Roberta also went to school in LASD and has taught here for 36 years. Monks and some before that. Teaching at Oak the whole time.
No, Springer.
Oh, that's right.
Springer, Pam and I started together. Next door, I should talk to your people.
I need to. Sandra, you need to get this in order. Next year. But 2nd and 3rd grade at Oak.
1st at Springer, 2nd and 3rd. Yeah.
And but taught Oak a long time. Taught 2nd grade at Oak a long time. Taught one of my boys at Oak, 2nd grade. And then moved to, only for a year. But then moved to 3rd grade.
5 years ago.
5 years ago. And it's been fantastic in 3rd grade. So big part of our Teachers Association as well, has served as LATA president. And really importantly, as the lead negotiator. So I've had the good fortune of working with Roberta through negotiations, and have always appreciated that time. How he's able to come to ultimately agreements. So thank you for everything. So all the people we're going to hear tonight, there's just under 300 years of experience leading the district this year, which is quite a bit. Linda Ripley Smith. Worked at Springer for 15 years as an aide, as the school office clerk, and most recently as the school administrative secretary. Being that face of the family see when they walk in the door at Springer, you're going to be sorely missed. I'm going to miss our conversation about what to catch on Netflix. But Kevin, appreciate your time here, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Rossi. Carol has been at LASD for 14 years as a speech language pathologist, most recently at Gordon-Fullis. I was up there today when Nadia was having your kids, your students sign your farewell card, and it was great hearing them talk a bit about you. So thank you, Carol, for everything you've done. Oh, and she made it. I had to coerce Jane Sanders. By coercing me gently arm twist. Jane, I know well as a parent at Almond when I first got to Almond. And then as a library specialist at Gordon-Fullis, and finally winding up as a library specialist for a period too at Almond, and then most recently a school administrative secretary. So Jane, I've loved working with you for many, many years in many different roles. So thanks for everything you've done, and thanks for coming. That is our entire crew. I'm going to ask you to come up for a. Okay. Can I have you come up for a group
You
shot?
go behind these owls over here, right? I guess, or?
Yeah, in front of the owl.
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Facing. These are owls, by the way.
Okay. Well,
On
I'm
this
still
side.
fairly, what's this side?
Face
Right
that,
here?
face that.
Face
For the phone now. Perfect.
One more. One more person I'm going to make sure we recognize. Mr. Randy Kenyon. Randy has amazingly been serving in one role in Los Altos School District for 35 years. Randy's our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Chief Business Official, whichever title you want to use. He answers to many. But he has, if you think back over 35 years of the economic times this area has gone through, and this country has gone through, Randy has really been the one to steer that financial ship and make sure that we are able to weather the very worst of times, really for the benefit of the students in our school district. And it certainly hasn't been easy, especially if we look back to that 2011 to 14-ish time frame. Incredibly difficult. I had to make some tough decisions, but really decisions that were always made for the best interests of students in mind. I've said this before. You know you have the right person in place when you're in a an animated discussion about what, and these were usually late in the evening when everyone else was gone, but discussions about what we need to retain and what needs to be cut, and how we can possibly make this happen. And we would often find each other on opposite natural sides, where I was arguing the financial position of, financial conservatism, and he was arguing for what we need to be doing to make sure kids are getting what they're getting. So to me, I always remember that, and that really speaks to who Randy is and everything. So Randy, we're going to miss you today.
We have Randy and Jeff retiring, and we have some officials here to bring them commendations because of their amazing service. First, we have Joseph Simonian, Supervisor Joseph.
Where would you like me? It's a risky question to ask.
You could probably stand in between.
Well,
normally there is a podium here. Sorry.
that's all right. Good evening. First, actually, I'm gonna, now that I've asked and you've answered, I'm just gonna stand right. I'm Supervisor Joe Simonian. Most relevant to this evening in terms of my participation is the fact that I spent 8 years as a local school board member to start my public service career on Palo Alto School Board. And one of the things I know by virtue of that experience is to say first, thank you to the teachers who have been recognized tonight. I am the son of 2 public school teachers, and I know what you've given. I know what the kids in your district have gotten as a result. So I want to make sure I start by saying thank you to you. And I know better than to play favorites, but a little shout out to Pam for the TK work. So you're dear to my heart. So thank you for that. Randy. In the category of thankless positions, business position is that person. And while I was pleased to hear all of the kind words about your service, I just want to say there's another measure that I would add to the list, and that is that in a community that repeatedly says yes to bond measures and yes to parcel taxes, they say that because they have confidence in the finances of their district and the way in which those dollars are managed. So as a steward over all those years, and just the 35 years, as someone in the world of politics and government, I think about it probably a little bit differently than you do. So what I think is Ronald Reagan started, followed by George Herbert Walker Bush, followed by Bill Clinton, followed by George Bush Younger, followed by Barack Obama, followed by Donald Trump. And I just want to say they came, they went, and you're still here. And because I'm from a government agency, we of course have a piece of hardware to leave you with. So let me ask my office to hand that to me. And I could say by the authority vested in me, but mostly what I really wanted to say is thank you. Truly, thank you. Everything is unanimous, so you should take a little satisfaction in that. And finally, the superintendent, my people tell me it's been 32 years in public education. So just want to point out my people got it right. So I had to say that because one of my people is here. So it also is this. Jeff and I were both drawn to public education. We obviously ended up doing that work in very different ways. But we also were drawn to doing the work in the place where we grew up and went to school ourselves. And while that's not a requirement to do good work, it's not a prerequisite. I think it makes it all the more satisfying, as it has in my observation. So I want to say thank you for the partnership that we've had over these last 10 years now that I've been back, and that our times have coincided. What I have always found is we can be very direct with one another. There are no games. There's a difference of opinion. It's respectful. We find a way through. More of that public service, community, our state, and our nation would be a better place. So let me just say, we also have some hardware, of course, for you. The only other thing I will say is, it has been my observation that people who are about to retire look happier, healthier.
All right, next up, we have Rita Abdel Malek from Assemblymember Mark Berman's office, presenting for Assemblymember Berman and State Senator Josh Becker. Also online, we have Joan Dent listening in from Senator Becker's office.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Rita, and I'm honored to be here today on behalf of Assemblymember Mark Berman and Senator Josh Becker to honor these two amazing individuals. Jeff, if any advocate for the district is to be called on today, it is you. You are the loudest. You are the most proud of the district, and it is absolutely amazing.
I just called them today on a
advocate and talk to about his concerns for the budget, and I have an answer for you, which I will get back to you on. But going back to that, you are a champion for these children. You have always had the education equity at the forefront of your advocacy, and that has made the district a better place for the children and for all of us. And Randy, you have made the financial stability and health of the district consistent throughout the pandemic and throughout everyday life. You have championed your team to multiple fiscal excellence awards, and you have always created a balance between the priorities and the realities of everyday life and the pandemic. So we thank you both, and we are honored to award you. Thank you so much. More hardware. That's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We do not have Anna Eshu's office here, but we do have the commendations from her, and she both does a flag that was flown at the Capitol. So. It was a team effort by our PTAs, and in fact, it was Brian's idea. These quilts that were made with t-shirts on the school. And it was made by one of our long-term subs, Becky Grayson. Oh. Here's yours. And if you want to see Randy's, there you go.
Look different.
All right.
So.
Do you want to say?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a 4 to 5 minute budget presentation.
I've got So I'll just say, thank you. As Joe Simidian said, we've just got fantastic people here, right? It starts with what happens out in the schools. And so I've always been so incredibly grateful. Sandra and I just talked about this today. Just with the quality of people we have teaching, supporting, it's really incredible. And it does make our jobs that much better. I don't know if it makes it easier, but it certainly makes it that much better and gratifying. And, you know, I get stated to me all the time, I don't understand how you can possibly do that job. And Sandra, you already signed your contract. I don't understand how you could possibly do that job. I'd never want that job, those sorts of things. But it's an incredible job. And it's a job I'm tremendously proud of to have done for so long. And in a place like this, it just makes it all the better, because this is about the best place you can work. And it's certainly the greatest place that I think to be superintendent of schools. So I want to say a big thank you to my wife, who has put up with me always being gone on Mondays and things like that. And this is her first board meeting, so I'm thinking she maybe believes me now, where I've been sneaking off. It's her birthday, so happy birthday.
Oh.
I just want to say thank you to all of you.
I'll just say ditto. Can't top that.
And on behalf of the board, all of you, the two of you, thank you so much for all the support you've given us and help make our jobs easier, because it made it easier for the communication, the interactions we could have. I appreciate it, and we all appreciate it. So thank you so much. As
And
I
it
warned
is a-
Jeff when he said he was retiring this year, I don't gush. So don't expect there to be long speeches about it, because I don't do that.
This is gushing.
This is.
But I will say, this idea of being a great place, it is about stability to a large degree, right? And I'm so grateful, and I've been able to do this for 12 years. And fantastic boards are a part of that, right? Stable boards that aren't single agenda, that have the best interest of the entire school community in mind is critical to success of the school district. So, and you can feel it from the board on down, and it makes a difference. So thanks all.
So we were going to take a short break while we rearrange furniture. Yeah, anybody who wants to slip out before we start talking numbers, this is your chance.
Maybe I'll come back. I got
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh. Another supportive board member. 2 more days. Lots of fun.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Good luck, you too.
I got all folks going.
I just wanted to say bye and thank you again. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. It was so nice meeting you all, and I hope you all have a great day. Also, my name is Rita. So we should get to know each other.
Shally, we still have a meeting.
That you made her cry.
All about this. No.
Did you take out the hours?
As we get back on the agenda, Mr. Bear, we're getting something.
Yes, just a couple of items. A reminder that this Wednesday is our big day. We're back in person for graduations. Block at 11 a.m. and begin at 1 p.m. There's parking. Oh, sorry.
You want
Begin at 11 a.m. Block at 1 p.m. There are parking places reserved at each. So look for those.
We have one at the block.
And there will be lunch at Block.
Okay.
Yep. Waiting for us. And then we have our, as you know, our last board meeting of the school year next Monday. That's it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, consent calendar. Any board members have any comment on the consent calendar items?
Can I just point out a couple of things?
Yes.
On consent. Just of note, item 2, the revised minutes of the May 2nd meeting. The revision is that the description of what transpired for the Universal Meals program was inadvertently left off. So that's added back. And then on number 5, I just want to point out that there is a correction in the spelling. It's Fagan Friedman and full frost, not just frost. So we can approve with that correction.
Any other comments? I give that motion to approve. So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Ladner, second by Shally. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. As we,
We gotta clarify, that's not a microphone.
it's not?
No,
I always thought it was.
I know.
It
I
was
just
back in
wanna-
the day.
Well, then never
These are
mind.
the microphones.
It's a light.
Goodness. Oh, you're
just so you know.
Well, now that I know, good evening. As we enter the final week of the school year, teachers are working hard, wrapping up their classes and enjoying the last few days of activities with their current students. We wish our families a relaxing summer so we can return rejuvenated in the fall. And congratulations to the retirees who are not returning in the fall and are on to new adventures. As we conclude our year, our thoughts are also with the community impacted by the tragedy in Texas. Our membership appreciates the good work our district does to support our students' mental and emotional health and is eager to learn more about school violence prevention. In other LATA news, LATA's exec board had our final meeting of the year today. I am excited to present Chris Hazelton, who will be LATA's new president. We are excited to have him on board and we will be working together closely in the coming weeks as we go through this transition period. So welcome to Chris and thank you. That's all for tonight.
Seeing there's no one planning to speak from the School Employees Association. To provide public comment on the agenda item, speaker cards are to be submitted to the superintendent. Speaker cards will not be accepted once the public comment begins. Your name will be announced when you're to speak. Community comments. This time is reserved for members of the public and employees to address the board on non-agendized items. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may take brief comments or ask clarifying questions. Anyone want to speak on non-agendized items? Action items. H1, school violence prevention and LASD.
Well, so I'm here tonight and I know we all feel the pain of the recent tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. And it's disheartening to hear that violence since then continues within our nation. And so I wanted to make sure we came tonight to give you all an update around some of the preventative measures we have in place and some plans as we move forward. So we'll talk a little bit about the types of environments we want to make sure we are creating for students. We'll talk about some of those preventative things and how could we prepare ourselves as our organization across all of our schools. So this is one of my new favorite graphics from the folks at Nation at Hope. And it's a really interesting organization that has brought together professionals in education, in trauma, in resilience. And they really talk about these three big buckets that we must have learning settings that are student-centered and teaching explicit skills for students to cope with all of the complexities that we have in life, that we must do as the leaders and the educators and the teachers in the classroom, and every position that we have must be actively building relationships with students so every student feels like they belong and have a place within our school settings. And that not only are we discreetly teaching kids skills on how to develop friendships and how to cope with difficulties, but that we are giving them opportunities in their learning experiences and their playground experiences throughout the day, throughout the years, to practice those skills, and that kids are getting feedback in real time about what's working and what's not working. And that's a really important component because folks can do all they want to say, sure, I taught my lesson on emotional resilience today, but if it's not something that we're talking about frequently, that we're bringing it back and really building that skill over time, that's an important piece. And then ultimately, our schools are about academic success. They are about emotional success, and really making sure that every student, when they leave our organization and go off into the high schools, feels like they had an experience that grounded them in the skills that they need for life. So that's just a little quickie around a lot of research from the Nation at Hope folks. But to talk more specifically, what do we do in Los Altos School District to create these safe, inclusive, and engaging schools? You know that we have invested in our social and emotional learning curriculum, that our teachers are using that curriculum, and I do believe an area of growth is that we're coming back to it throughout the day, throughout the weeks, and it's not just a lesson that we're teaching, and we're building those practices. We certainly have done a lot of work over the last 5 or 6 years to get a much more student-centered curriculum in place where kids feel like they have some choice, they have some agency in what they're learning and how they're learning, and that too builds an inclusive and engaging school. We know that our teachers and our staff must be well to be able to take care of and engage our children. So we have been doing work around how do we support our staff better as we've been in the pandemic, coming hopefully out of the pandemic. What are some of those pieces that we have in place? We certainly have increased, as you all know, we've heard in previous board meetings, but lots of mental health support for our teachers. We have a coaching team in place for our teachers as well, so they can get in real-time support as they need to do the very difficult job. And starting in the fall, we will be partnering with Sayety, which is a wellness app is not the right word, experience
for our staff, and we're really excited about bringing that partnership to life in the fall. And I really do believe it helps our staff really understand and remember why they do what they do, and provide some daily check-ins and supports for those staff members that need it. And then ultimately for our staff and our students, we want to make sure that we are a very inclusive environment. And so we have been making progress on our anti-bias and inclusion efforts. You all adopted our anti-bias framework. We will be having anti-bias training for our staff in the fall. So we make sure that we create that welcoming environment, not only for staff, but for our students as well. When we think of what can we do to prevent students who might be, or staff members who might be feeling like they do not belong, we have some pieces in place. We have our amazing school-based psychology team. We are fairly unique in the fact that we have school-based psychologists at all 9 of our schools who really go out of their way to develop relationships with students and staff and families for to be that kind of first pass of human contact when that's needed. We have great mental health counselors and supports through our partnership with CHAC, through our El Camino hospital grant. Our students and staff have great access to those preventative measures. This year, we've done more around family engagement. We hired Lola, who's been fantastic, to help us reach out to a portion of our community that we've had more difficulty traditionally reaching out to. We have our school and community linked services coordinator coming on in July, who will further help us to make sure that we're really able to reach all of our families, to make sure that they have the supports they need to help their students succeed at school. And we have a huge team between our psychologists, our chat counselors, and our labs behavior folks who do great work around social therapy behavior groups in real time, at recess, at lunch, in between. So students who need either some one-on-one or some more likely small group support, that they have access to that in our schools. So all of those pieces we see as preventative measures. You know that we have our multi-tiered system of support. We talk a lot about the academic piece, but it's just as important in that social and emotional piece. And when we see a student or a staff member who is clearly having some challenges, that's when our teams get together to help support. When it comes to school preparedness, we certainly never want an incident like what happened to happen here at our schools, but we want to be prepared if something like that happens on one of our campuses or near one of our campuses. For many years now, we've had a bullying reporting system on each of our websites. So students, staff, parents could report any instances of bullying or violence or fear that they might have. That's one way for folks in the community to share either anonymously or directly with our school staff. That goes immediately to principal and to Erin Green, our director of student and staff services, and those are acted upon very quickly and with some fidelity. We have over the last few years developed and really fleshed out our threat and risk assessment system. So our school psychologists, anytime they hear of a student who is potentially self-harming or talking about harming others, that's when a really amazing team comes together and talks through with students, with family members, and really understands the level of risk or the level of threat that is being experienced in the moment. I believe you heard from our director of student and staff, or our special ed director, Jennifer, earlier this year. We've done more risk assessments than we've ever done before this year. We know the isolation of the pandemic really has taken a toll on families and on students and staff. And so we have a system in place that when we hear something, we can respond, and we always go out in teams. No person is ever alone. but we really act quickly to get the information that we need. We partner with our law enforcement agencies if that's what's needed based on the level of threat assessment or risk assessment.
Very specific protocol.
It is
that's
a
followed.
very specific protocol and has levels of what that risk or threat may look like. We have historically worked with our law enforcement agencies, so Mountain View PD, Los Altos PD, or the Sheriff's Office to do active shooter training with our staffs. And prior to the pandemic, I want to say as long as I've been here, perhaps we've done drills on our campuses. And that training and theory, I think, has changed over time. The last time we were trained, it was slightly morphed because our local agencies are working collaboratively with all sorts of agencies around our county. They are researching kind of the latest horrible tragedies that happen to understand how the people have responded better. So our law enforcement groups really work with us to make sure that our training is up to date. I will tell you, I've heard from a few families since I sent out a letter after this tragedy, just with questions and concerns about, what age is appropriate for an active shooter drill. And I do think it's important that we relook again to see what is the guidance right now on those trainings, knowing that we have more students than ever and staff members who might be experiencing some trauma from the pandemic. I want to make sure that our research is the most up to date. We are consulting with Dr. Joshi, who is our Stanford psychiatry collaborator, just to really make sure that we hear from our law enforcement teams, we hear from our school psychologists, we hear from psychiatry, and make the best decision. We certainly want to make sure our staffs feel very well prepared and trained in the event of a horrific incident. But it's really the student piece is the question for me. So that's the work we'll be doing this summer. So we have a solid plan in the fall for that.
I'm just saying, if I
Yeah.
just interject,
Please.
part of that collaboration between agencies is to ensure that because there is sometimes called for mutual aid to come out from neighboring agencies. Santa Clara County has worked and has established consistent protocols throughout the county to ensure that every agency is using the same language, the same approach, should an incident like this occur.
And then lastly, we talk about violence prevention training, and this is a new training that two of our school psychologists, Will McGonigal and Claire Griffin, attended earlier this school year. And it's really about how do we train the adults in a system to look for signs without targeting or supposing that somebody is going to be violent, but through lots of research, there have been missed signs in every single violent tragedy that people saw or heard something and made a choice not to speak about it, record it, or what have you. So this is our administrators were trained this year on this particular training. It is a heavy training and a real challenge to watch and experience. And that is something we'll be working with our school psychologists on to bring to our staff in the fall as well. So those are a lot of our preparation pieces. So, like I mentioned, we'll be working on what does that district-wide staff training for the school violence prevention. We'll bring that to our staff in the fall. Do some further research around the active shooter training and what type of drill, if a drill, we want to propose for the fall. And that might be a conversation that we'll bring back to the board to discuss. And then, as I've been hearing from several teachers and several family members, I think it's a great opportunity perhaps to reach out to our broader community to bring people together to understand what could families be looking for at home? How do we make sure, I think of all the different facets, like hearing from law enforcement, do we have gun safety in homes that might have guns? Do we have, how do we kind of pull our whole wide community together to really talk about violence within the community, not even necessarily just at schools, but within our greater community. And so I'd love to reach out to our partner districts to see if that's something that they would like to work together on. That would like to consider this idea of a town hall in fall, late fall. Happy to answer questions.
Anyone wants to provide public comment, please send us your card to Jim. Meanwhile, any questions on the presentation?
I have a quick question. I think this is fabulous. And just want to first say thank you so much for reaching out to our partner districts. I think this has to be consistent in our area. Anti-bias training.
Yeah.
If there's some way to include the board in some sort of, maybe an abbreviated workshop, I want to make sure that we're speaking the same language. And when you say something, we understand it means the same thing. For just for sake of not just consistency, but also so we can better support what we're doing. And I think that it impacts the school district culture.
Yeah.
So
That's a great
please
idea.
think about us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelley.
And since we're not being people wanting to address us. let's first hand up.
Yeah, okay. That was the question. I'm glad, so first of all, I'm glad you're looking at the active shooter training again.
Yeah.
For a lot of things, that there's
Yeah.
a lot of questions about whether that's helpful, especially as we're trying to reestablish schools as safe spaces.
Right.
You know, as you read through every tragedy is an anecdote, so it's hard to generalize, but I haven't read an anecdote in a long time where the active shooter training help a better outcome. So I'm glad we're looking at that. I know another question that I've heard from a lot of community members is about the physical security of our campuses. And I know there's been a lot of changing thought over time on whether tall fences versus lots of exits versus, and so while I don't want to, publish a document with all of the security weaknesses of our campuses necessarily, I think it would be great as part of maybe the town hall to have particularly local law enforcement talk about the latest thinking, and then also be able to talk about, I know we've done a lot of things over the years around locking doors and
Yes.
more surveillance on other things. So it would be great to be able to sort of list that stuff for especially for parents who haven't been paying attention over the years and now hear about a tragedy, for us to be able to say, yes, we do this, yes, we do that, yes, we do that.
Yeah.
Just to give them that sense of reassurance.
Brian, that would be good to include in our facilities master plan that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. As well, as a basic standard, yeah. So I'd love to see more about that in the fall. And then the other thing is you're talking about sort of community discussions. I don't think we have any gun shops in our district, but I think there are a couple in the high school district, and it seems to me maybe it would be good to try to pull those and maybe even countywide conversation, given how many of these tragedies are around young people who go and buy a gun. I know in California it's a lot harder than it is in Texas, but still, if we can maybe make them feel like they know who to reach out to if they see something odd. Something fine with them.
Just one question, other than responding to an act of violence, is there any way that we could tell that we're doing the right thing? Any way we can figure out that, yes, we're effective as opposed to doing something, perhaps no school.
Well, I think we look to the research like the Foundation at Hope folks who are looking at the history of those different tragedies over time and really doing lots of research. And it's not just around gun violence, like this group includes folks who did work after 9/11 with the schools in New York City and really have worked with students experiencing trauma. So I think the research is pretty solid around what is it. We know that kids want to belong. Everybody wants to belong, right? And how do you not only belong, but have them engaged in some meaningful work in a very safe and loving and welcoming and inclusive environment where they matter. Everybody wants to matter.
It's just fun, man. So we will put it in that. But I think as we're going down the idea of the town hall approach and the conversation too about my wife is writing 50 letters at home about gun violence and what can I change this at this level. That might be what that conversation too. What can we do as a community? Yeah. That's just a hard one to bring out. I appreciate you guys. Yeah.
Give Sam for the honor of taking items 2 and 3.
Absolutely. Sandra?
Absolutely.
2022-24 employment agreement for assistant superintendent of schools and business services. Oh, I have to read something.
Yeah, I feel like Steve has to read a little something, but
Do
I
you want
am
to do intro,
thrilled, I'll do
perhaps?
a little intro if that's all
Sure,
right.
go for it.
I'm thrilled that Eric Wallakevitz, yes? Wallakevitz, Wallakevich, I'm gonna get it. Is joining our team, where he's presented tonight as our new Chief Business Officer, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services. Eric has gone through a party recruitment and interview and thorough process within the community, and we're really thrilled that he's bringing his experience to us. And so Steve, I'll let you read the,
I think moment of silence.
yeah.
Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Government Code, Section 54953 requires the board, prior to taking final action, provide an oral summary of the recommendation for a final action on salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency, the open meeting in which the final action is taken. The following are the financial terms of the employment agreement with Mr. Eric Kevich. The district is entering a 2-year employment agreement that will expire on June 30th, 2024, unless sooner terminated is provided in the agreement. The assistant superintendent's base salary for the 2022-2023 year shall be $232,185. The base salary is subject to an adjustment in future years by board action on consideration of merit, performance, fiscal considerations, and any other criteria determined relevant by the board. Assistant superintendent shall be entitled to the same fringe benefits such as medical, dental, vision, and eligibility to retiree health and welfare benefits that are offered to all district certificated administrators. Assistant superintendent shall receive a $250 monthly travel allowance in lieu of reimbursement for travel within the district boundaries. Assistant superintendent shall be entitled to 25 days paid vacation, 11 holidays, 3 personal days, and 2.5 floating holidays. Assistant superintendent shall accrue 6 days a year required by them. Okay. So I think the ultimately versus to is approve this. Do we have any questions? I see nobody from public wants to public comment. Board, any questions or discussion? Can I get a motion? Thank you. Vladimir?
I'll second.
Thank you, Shannon. Moved by Vladimir, second by Shelley. Can I get an agreement to approve the 2024 employment agreement for assistant superintendent of schools and business services, Mr. Wallakevich?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Sandra, again.
Item 3, here we
Yes.
go. I am thrilled to bring to you Dr. Carrie Bosco for the position of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Carrie also went through a very thorough process and brings to us a lot of experience in this very role and many roles beyond that. So I'm thrilled for you to consider approving her contract tonight.
Okay, fuck yours. Seatbelts, everybody. Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction. Government Code, Section 54953 requires requires the board, prior to taking final action, to provide an oral summary of a recommendation for final action on salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency, the open meeting in which the final action will be taken. The following is the financial terms for employment agreement for Dr. Carrie Morrisco. This is entering into a 2-year employment agreement that will expire on June 30th, 2024, unless sooner terminated as provided by the agreement. Assistance superintendent's base salary for the 2022-2023 shall be $232,185. The base salary is subject to adjustment in future years by the board action on consideration of merit, performance, fiscal consideration, and any other criteria determined to be relevant by the board. The assistant superintendent shall be entitled to the same fringe benefits such as medical, dental, vision, and eligibility to retire, the health and welfare benefits that are offered to all district certificated administrators. Assistant superintendent shall receive $250 a month travel allowance and bill reimbursement for travel within the district boundaries. The assistant superintendent shall be entitled to 25 days paid vacation, 11 holidays, 3 personal days, 2.5 floating holidays. The assistant superintendent shall accrue 12 days per year as required by. Any public comment other than to comment on how I read it? Seeing none, any comments by the board? May I get a motion to approve? So moved by Vladimir, second by Shelley. All in favor?
Aye.
Five to vote on that one. So now we have a public hearing, which means I have to suspend the board meeting and open the public hearing on TK5 science curriculum adoption.
Absolutely. I'm going to invite Karen Wilson to come up. Karen is our coordinator of curriculum and instruction, who's really been leading the work around science adoption. And it's Karen has been knee deep in science since our next generation science standards came out, and incredibly patient because it's been many years for us to get to this point of saving some money, because this is a big adoption financially for us. So Karen is going to share with the folks, and then we'll get to the other part.
Thank you for having me here this evening. I am extremely excited to share all this information with you. This is about this TK science adoption. We're going to go through the process, the rationale, our recommendation, how we're going to support it and implement. So just a quick rationale. Sandra had mentioned we have new science standards. We've adopted through the state, or I should say the state has adopted new science standards. We call them the next generation science standards, and for short NGSS. So if you hear me refer to NGSS, I'm referring to the standards. Since they've been adopted though, we've been working with teachers through professional development to learn about the standards, how they work, the structure of them, and how to implement them in the classroom. Our 6 through 8 teachers actually have been writing units that are aligned with the standards as well. But what we really do need is a curriculum for teachers to follow. And so that is the rationale for our adoption. The process. This is just the overall process that we have taken, starting with the materials and looking at different publishers and really evaluating things that align to our standards of what we want for our students. We really wanted a student-centered curriculum. So each of these items, it has a date next to them, but I'm going to touch upon them throughout this presentation. Starting off with how we evaluated each of the publishers' curriculum. We really wanted, again, to make sure it was student-centered. But we also wanted to make sure that it was aligned with the new standards. When you see that 3 dimensions, the standards are written with the 3 components: the science and engineering practices, the cross-cutting concepts, which are themes throughout, and then the content, what they call the DCIs. So each of those work in tandem for the standard itself. We we also wanted to make sure that it included environmental principles because also California has adopted those. We really wanted to make sure it was hands-on. Students are really working with experience of science, inquiry focused as well, and that they had special supports for teachers. So we looked at all of these different curricula, and 2 of them rose to the top. And those are the 2 that we decided to pilot this year. This is our cohort team. We reached out last spring to find out who would be interested. We really wanted to make sure that all of the schools were represented as well as each grade level. And right here is Kate, right, was part of our 6-8 group that did the pilot this year. We also had Beth Leach, who was here this evening as well, and Grace Choi as our facilitators. Try to slow down, I'm talking too fast. Our team really helped teachers out. We made sure that they had everything that they needed. We went into their classrooms and to actually look at how the curriculum, how students were interacting with that curriculum. And we also talked to students to find out about their experience. Round one. Round one was Inspire Science. We had a training in October, and then the teachers taught a full unit. They had from October through January, February sometime to complete that 1 unit, and then they completed an evaluation form to provide us with some feedback. Round 2 was Twig Science. We had training in March, and then again, the teachers taught a full unit and then completed an evaluation. Some of them actually just finished up. They really wanted to complete the whole unit, even though we needed to get together and provide feedback. They had enough covered, but they really, really enjoyed round 2. Wanted to share with you some of the teacher feedback that we got through the 2 rounds. What you see here is part of the rubric that they were given on a scale from 1 to 3, 1 meaning no evidence, and 3 very heavily evidence based. So we were really looking for, this is the student-centered part. How were students engaging with the curriculum? Was it hands-on? Did it align with our standards? And were students curious? Were they asking questions? These are some of the things we really wanted to see. And then, of course, teacher supports. How well did this curriculum support teachers in instruction? So we were looking at both of them had online resources. How easily were they used or accessible? Did they have, in the TE, meaning teacher edition, did they have those supports for students who were ready for a challenge, or students with special needs, or a student that was learning English? We looked for all of these things. For our student focus group, for our elementary students, our main question was, what did you learn? But for our junior high, the teachers decided to create a survey for them. So they were really asking some more deeper level questions, like how was the reading material? How did you interact with it? Was it helpful? Can you maneuver the online platform? And then what was your overall experience? So this is our first set of data for K-5. What we were really looking for was, where did we see real differences between Twig and Inspire? And so these particular areas is where it really showed the difference. So when teachers were looking at the online resources, Twig was much easier for them to use. For student engagement, they felt that Twig definitely rose to the top for that. And then as well as looking at assessments and really making students thinking visible. So it really, if you can see, the Inspire is the blue column or bar, and then Twig is the red. And then we also had them give us verbal feedback as well as in their own words. And so I just highlighted a few of those words, things that we were looking for: student hands-on, student engagement, The videos are really engaging for students, and this particular one said they highly recommended Twig. With the student focus group, because we were asking questions and gathered a lot of information, we really looked to see what themes emerged. And one thing that both of the curricula provided was a project or a STEM project for each unit. With Twig though, Twig launched the project in the beginning of the unit and provided them time to work on it throughout. And then at the end, finishing up with that, with all of the learning through. Whereas Inspire, they went through the whole unit and then did the project at the end. So the kids really liked working on it throughout the unit. They really enjoyed the videos and that they had a more hands-on experience with it. 6-8, the data came back a little bit differently. As you can see, we pulled the similar question stems on this. And as you can see, again, Inspire is blue and Twig is red. On some things, they felt like Twig was stronger, and on others, they felt Twig was stronger. So there really wasn't one that rose to the top. So when we got together on our evaluation day, we really discussed that and tried to come up with some solutions. And with that, our solutions were to move forward with TK5 for Twig, but to hold off for 6-8. We wanted one more year to do some more evaluation of different curricula that are out there, and do another year of piloting so that we choose the right one for our students and for our teachers. And in fact, I got together with a 6-8 group this afternoon to start planning that out. We brought this information to the Curriculum Council and talked about the data and came up with this idea of going forward with TK5 for Twig and waiting that year for 6-8. And a motion was made with a second approved with no oppositions. Those who were attending, we had 4 parents, 5 teachers, and 3 administrators present. We also put together a parent package so that parents can review the curriculum as well. And we had 145 unique reviews for that. I wanted to give you a quick snapshot of the curriculum, not going in depth because I could talk about it for a very long time, but just a quick pieces of it to give you some ideas. So for the curriculum, again, I talked about the criteria that we were looking for, and Twig was aligned with our standards. It was inquiry-based, it was phenomenon-based, which I won't get into today, but it had hands-on experiences and also multiple times for students to actually work together. And using this, developing the knowledge over time. With Twig, teacher materials come in print and digital, as well as student materials come with print and digital, and then the hands-on science kits for each unit. I shared with you a link to some videos. I don't know if you had an opportunity to watch, but if you haven't yet, I do recommend going and viewing some of these videos because they're really engaging. Each unit launches with this type of video and it gives students excitement. It also provides them with that curiosity and you're ready to start asking questions about that phenomenon and ready to learn about it as well. These videos are also provided to families. There's a family portal and there's a letter that goes home to each parent, each unit, and they can also view that video. We wanted to make sure teachers were supported, and so here are some of the things that are throughout the teacher's edition to help teachers with instruction. Our implementation plan. We already have our summer launch scheduled for August 12th if we are moving forward. We'll invite teachers, principals, and coaches to participate in our launch. And those teachers that can't attend the August 12th, we will provide it again when school starts. We also will equip our coaches to support teachers throughout the year with our new curriculum. So tonight, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have and you recommend for approval.
So since we're in a public hearing, anyone have comments or questions they want to bring up? Seeing, I'm gonna close the public hearing and restart the meeting. Curriculum adoption. We would like, I think at this point, it's, anyone like a comment on curriculum adoption, but basically, this is the point where we would be approving for TK 5. Big adoption. Questions from the board? That's right, yeah.
Of the 145 unique views from the parents or whatever, were there any comments that came in?
So provided a digital access, but we also, they could come in and actually turn pages and review. We didn't have anybody come in to do that. And if they came in, we had, the full survey form for them to fill out. But just with the digital view, we didn't provide that. So, but we did have many people that viewed it. I will tell, I'm sorry, just to add though, I will tell you the parents that were present during the curriculum council, they were extremely excited about what they were seeing and very positive comments.
I watched those videos. They were engaging. And I actually made sure I didn't watch all of them, but I watched like a young one. And then I'm like, okay, let me see where we are at the fifth grade.
Right.
And I felt as a parent, they seemed actively engaging for the age.
Yes.
Are the videos available in languages other than English?
That is a great question. I'm not sure, but I can find out. I know.
Well, okay. I think you guys need to decide that, but it might be helpful if it were. That's
Yes.
all.
I believe the family letters
Yes.
come in several different languages, but the video is really meant to be for students. It's the launch to the unit.
Right.
And I don't believe that they provide translated videos.
So if that's the case, you have somebody who's not English proficient, what are you gonna do?
A student,
Yeah,
well, that's, a video in and of itself provides some scaffolding for students who don't have the language through visuals, and throughout the unit, an opportunity to do science as they're building their vocabulary. But the instruction, if you want to come in and read through a particular lesson, it is probably the most concrete, providing teachers directions of how to support their English learners. It will say for this lesson, bring your kids into a small group before this lesson. You want to teach these 3 vocabulary words. You want to preview this book or give them this to touch and feel. It really provides very concrete and doable supports for teachers.
we might want to check on that.
Can I just say, based on the link that's attached to the agenda, there are trailers in English and Spanish
Oh,
for
great.
families, so that is.
I knew there was Spanish, but I wasn't sure if the video would apply to videos. Yeah.
Questions? One I had was we've been looking at science adoption for a while. Obviously. And we put off 6, 8 for yet another. Are we in trouble for doing that, or is there no deadline?
We're not in trouble for that. I think, again, we want to make sure that we're choosing the best curriculum. And I will say 6-8 has been doing amazing work with NGSS and has written many units, but we do want to have an aligned curriculum. So I think we'll be fine waiting that 1 year.
Great. Can I get a motion to approve TWIG for K5?
So moved.
That's Gladner. Shall we? Thank you. Moved by Gladner, seconded by Shelley. Can I get a board approval? That was a 5-0.
Congratulations, Karen Wilson. All of her dreams are coming true.
Item 6, transfer of development rights, purchase and sale agreement for MD campus. LL. Yeah. Andy?
Yes, we have a rather lengthy agenda, so I'll be very brief. You have in front of you tonight a proposed agreement with Rockwood developer, called MV Campus Owner LLC. Rockwood property. This agreement would enable us to transfer 125,000 square feet of unused development rights that we have on that site to this developer at $130 a square foot for $16,250,000. Roughly 20% of the 12 TDRs that we're looking to transfer and get paid for. And I'm recommending that you approve this agreement tonight. Say anything more, just let you take it from there.
And we'd like to invite public comment, please submit us with Preparedness. Any questions for Randy while we're waiting for something? Let's see if they flocking to put in a speaker card. Any other questions, comments that we'd like to make before we move to approve this? Can I get a motion to approve? So. By Vladimir, second by Shelley. Can I get all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it's be 5-0.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's your moment. Citizen Advisory Committee for Finance and Report. Mr. Kenyon.
Yeah, I'm just going to introduce Gary Hedden, our current chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance, to make the annual report of findings and recommendations. And note that past chair Chris Cole's here to, I think, support Gary. He needs support.
Just keeping an eye on me.
Keep an eye on him. So let's turn over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Randy. Speaking of the light. I'm Gary Hedden, chair of the CACF. Everybody knows Citizen Advisory Committee on Finance. I've been a part of this committee since 2018. We've got 4 people who came on since me, so newer people. We've had all the rest have been here quite a while. 14 plus years in a couple of cases. Anyway, they've all helped me with this report. I think in particular for this report, it was Fred Gallagher, or Matt Hewson, and our very own Curtis Cole, who helped me. So with that, next slide, please. We don't have slides? I have slides. I can do it. What am I aiming at?
Randy.
Make sure that the red lights are.
Oh, left and right. Thank you. This is the agenda, the current financial situation, enrollment trends, expense projections, and recommendations. Pretty much what you saw when I did this mid-year report in February. But a few changes. The financial situation, revenue, property tax revenue, 69% of the total is in a very good position. Tax growth, the assessed value. Yeah, maybe I should get it Randy. Yeah, we're in a good position. Tax growth, the assessed value for the current year supports the district's projection of 5% growth in property taxes for fiscal year 2022. Last year it was 4%, as you may recall. Other local revenues are flat or in decline. The personal tax, of course, is flat. LAEF, which is about $2.5 million, is in decline, and that funding has declined along with enrollment by about 600,000 in the last several years. So there is a definite connection there. I remember this time. Financial situation, property tax projections. We consider 2 risks: a near-term recession and longer-term inflation. The base case scenario balances these risks with a robust real estate market. That's the green line, which continues property tax growth at 5%. The recession scenario has a decline in tax growth in 2024-25, following a recession in the next 12 months. So this is just saying it could happen. That would be the case, and revenue would go down. We did not present an inflation scenario, although it poses substantial risk, but right now it's running at 7 or 8%. It's just such conjecture now. We didn't think we could come up with anything meaningful. Just be aware, inflation is out there right now. Financial situation reserves. Reserves are at 18 to 19%. This is really a healthy number that we haven't seen in quite a while. But we feel it will be difficult to maintain at this level. Inflation pressure will be challenging, that's 7 to 9% that I mentioned. Inflation will impact all expenses, general operating, capital, maintenance, and salaries. Revenue is not likely to keep up with the current rate of inflation. Revenue maybe goes up by 5%, inflation is more than this. That's an ongoing challenge. Enrollment is down, likely to stay down or flat. This is not just our school district, it's many school districts. Current enrollment is below the lowest estimate made 2 years ago. This slide you saw. We are outside the bounds of what our demographer gave us 2 years ago. We don't have an updated report from the demographer, but I think it's pretty clear. Enrollment has not changed much. It's actually dropping a bit or going up slightly, and that's expected to continue. The macro trends, and I'll get to that slide in a second, suggest enrollment will stay low or recover slowly. The best enrollment growth projection at 1.5% is expected to be below revenue growth, which I guess is meant to be good news. It means we can probably manage the cost. Now, the new TK programs are adding new student population to this forecast. These are the macro trends. COVID and remote work going to impact enrollment going to go down. Higher housing costs and the tech companies supported remote work means population growth in the area will be muted. Spike. Birth rates have declined a little bit. The graduating, this is an interesting one, which we pointed out last time. The cohort of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, as they move through the system, are being replaced in effect by the smaller groups of students, K12. A net decline of almost 400. In this mid-year report, we reported an estimate of -1 of 412. Now it's just as flat, it's minus 397. It's the same. Enrollment growth is going down by that projection. Expenses will increase. The operating finances are currently in good shape, but inflation is going to drive up costs. Again, everything, general operating, capital, improvements, maintenance, and salaries. Revenue growth, again, is not likely to keep up with inflation. So that's our role as a CACF, is to tell it like it is and give you that fresh perspective or that unwanted perspective and try to keep it honest. That's our intention. Expenses, resignations, and retirements, staff turnover, as you might imagine, is disruptive and expensive. Historically, the data suggests that we don't have a problem. Resignations have averaged 15 per year. Retirements have averaged 7 per year. This attrition rate, those two, is 9%. That's considered reasonable or manageable. I don't know if you realize that the city of Los Altos recently is going through much higher attrition rates, more like closer to 50% or at executive level, 75%. It's outrageous. We are not in that position. However, it's the big however. It will be very important to monitor our attrition rate and be prepared to offer mitigation. Earlier, it was very clear, I think, that we take great pride in our staff and our teachers. But inflation may force, and that's not a perjury term, that's just the way it is, may force salary adjustments in order to stay competitive. And I think it's important for us to reward or compensate our staff and teachers appropriately. It doesn't help the budget though. So finally, the recommendations. And this will be a little different. Oh, thank you. Slow learner. This will be a little different than mid-year when we had the solid reserves, and our recommendation then was, we'll spend some of that. Come on, guys. And actually you did. You gave a salary adjustment, started funding some capital projects. There'll be analysis of the impact on maintenance projects long-term. But we should maintain this solid reserve. That's our recommendation now. Guard it carefully. It's a financial cushion in the event of a deep recession. It's a cushion in the event of prolonged inflation. So caution. Low enrollment growth offers opportunity. We mentioned that before as well. There may be some buildings, facilities that are available for rental income. And again, as enrollment is at a lower level, especially in a couple of years perhaps, that might be a less disruptive time to move to the middle school model. Fewer students will be impacted, fewer families will be impacted. We saw the mental health risks. I had no idea it was at the highest risk assessments were at the highest level ever. That's kind of a frightening thought, but I totally understand that. So we are okay with extending some of the reserves on addressing mental health needs. Create a multi-year plan for managing and funding maintenance expenses. It'd be one thing to come up with a list of things that need to be maintained. It's another to come up with a mechanism to fund it that we can rely on. And create a plan to manage the cost of opening the 10th school site. That's coming up. I know you're working on it. It'll probably be 2 years out, but we want to see how you're going to manage those costs. So that's it. I guess the final word would be that we're in pretty good shape now, but the two things that I've mentioned, inflation and possible recession, be cautious, be careful, don't spend all your money. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. Anyone would create a comment? Give it to Jeff, please. Any questions on the presentation?
One, I think, fairly minor question, but when you look at the enrollment growth trends in the 387 students over the next 3 years, it looks like that number is not taking into account the TK
It did a little bit,
growth.
It hasn't really hit yet, so
Right.
it's
but-
gonna, it'll be,
Right,
it'll
but
be bigger.
it looked like off the top of my head, about as much as half of that might be sort of backfilled away on the campuses. Obviously not the same grade levels, but in terms of campus population, number of teachers we need by growth in TK. So I just want to make sure. Sounds
Well,
like,
that's the number I got from Mike.
right. Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Any other clarifying questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you all, to you and all of your people.
Let me add my thanks to Gary and Curtis for being here, making the presentation. You both have seen the person to your right, so you'll be meeting Eric again.
Yeah, Eric's our new buddy.
Yeah.
They're already saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, budget review committee recommendations.
Yes, this is just sharing with you. I'm not going to read or repeat the recommendations. You've had a chance to look at it. It's a short one, single page. Remind you that you have 2 board members participate in the budget review committee, Ryan and Vladimir. I just want to point out 2 things, and they kind of echo what you heard from CACF. Budget review committee, among other things, supports investing in mental health supports in the coming year. And secondly, budget review committee recognizes the issue about teacher and other staff recruitment and retention, which could have an effect, obviously, dealing with compensation for employees. So both of those are highlighted in the recommendation. Besides that, I'm just here to answer any questions. And they are recommending approval of the budget as is presented here tonight.
Any other questions for Randy on their committee resolutions? Move forward. We have another public hearing, a chance to use the gavel. Public hearing 2022-2023 local control funding formula, LCF, budget process already for parents. This is ending and starting.
Yes.
You're on.
This is your sponsor.
When
Wow.
All right, here we go. So I put up this graphic for you because there are multiple components to tonight's public hearings. Randy and I will come back a week from tonight to allow you to choose to approve each of these plans. But tonight, we're starting with our budget overview for parents. You might remember that this began, I want to say 2 years ago, in an effort to make the budget more transparent and an easy to read, supposedly 2 to 3 page document. It is a template that we use, so there's little editing ability. But the goal is to provide that transparency to parents, and it really highlights our commitment to, in this particular document, they refer to high needs students within the LCAP. Those same students are called unduplicated pupils, who are our foster homeless, our English learners, and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So this is really the purpose of the budget overview for parents. You can see the 3 pieces there that really highlight working closely with, shout out to Lirio if she's in the audience, but Lirio and Randy's office to make sure that our numbers line up with Randy's budget.
Lirio is watching.
Oh, is she watching? Good job, Lirio. Yeah, fantastic. So tonight we have the draft, the BOP, the overview for parents, available on the district website. It was posted as part of this agenda. We have our public hearing tonight, and next week we'll consider it for adoption.
Any public would like to comment on this item? Not seeing that, I think we'll close the public hearing and move on.
Great.
Put the meeting back in order.
Great.
Now we have another public hearing.
We sure do.
Oh, boy.
So many.
Public hearing, 2022-23, local control and accountability plan. Okay. Go.
There we go. Thank you, Marcy. So tonight, the LCAP template, and you probably saw the very long attached document. In the LCAP template, this is the one that we will submit to our county office of education. It actually includes all 5 of those components. So it'd be in that order. They're very particular, folks. So it starts with the budget overview. It has the one-time supplement to the annual update. I came earlier this year and we went through that. It then has the actual LCAP. New this year are the action tables, and this is what Lirio and the business office uses to derive the numbers and feeds right into the LCAP. And then we are also required to include all of the template instructions for folks, just because they're so excited to read through those template instructions. So tonight, our public hearing has been noticed. The document is available to the public. We're holding our hearing tonight. Next week, we will come back and you will consider. I did want to let you know that next week when I come back, or by Thursday when we put out the new packet, there was one section of data in the LCAP that we could not calculate in time, and it was around goal 3. Yes, goal 3. We were able to calculate our Fontes and Pinnell reading benchmark for all students, but it just takes us a little longer in goal 3 to look at our special populations of students. So we're crunching those numbers right now, and that will be, you'll get a slightly revised update just with those 3 metrics included for your actual adoption. But I wanted to let you know that. Each year, our LCAP has our plan summary that just kind of tells a little bit about our district, the ways in which we've engaged our educational partners this year and getting feedback. We've met all of our requirements. We had a community survey. We met with our DLAP. We met with our curriculum council. We met with our budget review to get some feedback and input. Each of the goals of our 4 goals and all of the actions are delineated. It does include the metrics for our last year was our base year. This is year 1 then, and then does highlight the work and the funding around our increased and improved services. And like I said, the action tables are new and real interesting to look at. So those are for you. I wanted to just remind you of our 4 goals, and the work we've been doing has really fallen within each of those goals. And the work around improving services for our unduplicated pupils is a lot of what you've heard this year around our MTSS work, our data walls, our ensuring that students are getting those targeted supports when they need it. It's just a little screenshot of those fancy action expenditure tables. There you go. We'll come back next week. I think that's the next slide. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
It's the public hearing. There's very interesting that ask questions at this point too, including the board. Close the public hearing. You have seen no comments. And lucky y'all, I get to use the gavel one more time for yet another public hearing on the 2022-2023 district budgets. Going that public hearing to order, Mr. King.
Yeah, thank you. And this is just information. We'll bring the budget to you at the next meeting, as Sandra indicated. We'll spend a lot of time to see the slides. Basically, our budget meets all the state requirements. And we balance, but also meets our requirements for the current, for the budget in the next 2 fiscal years. Start with the focus on our general fund. Biggest key assumption on revenues is our property tax growth. As you heard, we're projecting 5% growth, which we think is a very legitimate, probably still conservative projection based on over 7% annual AV growth over the last 10 years. Want to point out some of the impacts on charter school. We're projecting growth of the 11, 11, 11, 11. Oh, I should say 11, 11. 1,111. That's not 411. Predominantly in district students. This is based off of the current agreement with the town. Again, as we assumed last year, 50 students come from out of district. We're projecting that enrollment to stay flat. We don't have any other time. We're also projecting the transfer of property tax revenues to reflect the governor's revise, which has a significant COLA cost of living adjustment of 6.56%, which will increase our transfer about $1 million over the current year. And they get a share of the parcel tax of $223 parcel tax. That's one a little under $700,000 a year in transfer we make for their share. No other major key assumptions I want to highlight. Just that the governor has proposed a lot of money. The state is doing quite well financially, proposing a lot of money to schools, but most of it, because we're basic aid, is not going to us. Most of it going to LCF districts. There is a proposal of $8 billion of discretionary money that is debated between the governor and the 2 houses of the legislature over how best to use those monies. It's still proposal stage, so we didn't incorporate any of that funding into our budget projections at this time.
I think recognizing that, Randy, but whatever that ends up being, 8 billion is a large number that they're pushing around statewide, right?
Right, as we talked, I think before, that
Yeah.
it could be over $4 million for us, over 1.2 or something, 1.2, $1,200 per student, $1,200 per student, so it's a big chunk of change. On the expense side, we're projecting 2 fewer teachers. We have a slight enrollment projection, and slight growth in enrollment projection, but because of the way staffing and the cohorts have worked out this year, there's room to accommodate additional staffing, even though, staffing reduction, even though we're having some slight enrollment growth. We've incorporated additional TK students The growth that we have projected is 57 students, but only one additional class at this time. If all those 57 additional 57 students show up, we may need to add another class beyond the 4 additional. So we will see as we get closer to the start of the year where we're at. Our projections were based on the number of students that we knew of that were registered already. We do have additional staff on the classified side. We have some additional coordinators, 2 additional coordinators, and additional classroom mates, both TK and special education. But importantly, there's no across the board salary increases projected. That's a negotiable item. Just know that while I should have said early on, we've heard from CHF, our finances are in good shape. Projecting to have roughly an 18% reserve at the end of the year. But that doesn't incorporate across the board increases. So likely, this is a very high level. You have in your packet online the very detailed state reports. You have this kind of summarizes everything which is here to read. You'll note that we're just spending about $700,000 more than we're taking in next year, and that change of negative $682,000. We have a healthy beginning balance dropping down to an unrestricted ending balance of just a little over $10 million. When added with our special reserve fund, it's a little over 18% reserves. We're projecting ending the current year, 21-22, at 19%, so it's a little less than a 1% drop from current year with that $682,000 change. I have a couple slides that show current year revenues compared to next year and current year expenses compared to next year. See, I highlighted why the change. A lot of it has to do with COVID funding from one time being shown in the current 21-22 year, going away in the 22-23 budget year, both on the revenue side and the expense side. We'll note that we are projecting that our facility use fees will go up and will reach the pre-pandemic level. That's a significant $400,000 increase over what we're projecting in revenues this year. On the expense side, again, the comparison, you'll see 2 fewer teachers. We have step and column movement. Not a big change in certificated salaries. Bigger change on classified. Bigger, but it is a bigger change. For the additional staffing, we have significant increases in both our PERS and PERS, our district contribution payroll tax for those 2 pension systems. We do have 7.5% projected health insurance cost increases. And you'll see as we have a decline in some of the expenses due to the COVID funding and spending of those monies in the current year, when the funding goes away, the expenditures go away in the first year. I will make one comment at the bottom. Just note that we're transferring a little over $1.1 million from the general fund into what will be a new fund. This will be the first time that you're seeing a cafeteria fund, which we have not needed, but will need under the new Universal Meals Program to account for our operations for our food service program. And we will be encroaching on the general fund by about a little over $1.1 million projected for next year. Moving to the multi-year projections. Again, as you heard from Gary, we're looking at 5% annual growth in property taxes. A little bit of growth, relatively stable, relatively flat, both enrollment and staffing over the 5-year horizon. I've already mentioned the BCS enrollment. We're assuming that funding for LAS stays flat at $2.5 million per year based on the current projection for next year. We do incorporate we do not include the parcel caps being renewed at the end of the 24-25 year baseline. this case. Here's what it looks like at a very high level. You can see at the very bottom, the reserves, and how we are at 18%, and they continue to grow as the compounding effect of property tax growth on the revenue side. Even with the expiration of the parcel tax, the reserves continue to grow. But again, don't have any across the board salary increases which will certainly affect what these projections look like if you start modeling the possibilities there. Have to look at all of our funds. We have some special funds, our special revenue funds. Looking at the cafeteria fund in particular, since it's brand new, don't have any money in there. It's a brand new fund, right? So we're projecting almost $3 million in revenue. That revenue includes the transfer of over 1.1 million from the general fund. So the real revenue is coming in state and federal reimbursements for the real costs. The expenses include the cost of meals, includes the new staffing, includes any of the modifications we need to make surveys. Then we have our two special reserves. We have a large balance in one, very small balance that we're just maintaining forward. And then we have three capital funds. Just note the deferred maintenance fund is actually a special revenue fund with accounting parlance, but it is a capital fund, so I'm including it here. You can see the ending balance that we're projecting for the current year and what happens over the course of next year. We have a very large fund of money in our building fund based upon our bond sale to help us pay for the 10th site. And that money is what we would use to start to develop that site, but obviously we need more than that amount of money. We have minimal amount of money in deferred maintenance, and we have some money in our capital facilities funds, which comes from developer fees, protecting drawdown a little $100,000 there. So that's the general information at a very high level. We will ask you to adopt our budget next meeting. I think I'll just stop and see if there's any questions.
This is the public hearing. Anyone in the public would like to comment on the budget as presented? Or do you have any questions for Randy?
I have one quick question, actually not about this, but when we're talking to our legislators, I've seen that the legislature amazingly is talking about yet another underfunded mandate in transportation. And
Yes.
so if you could circulate to us what the impact to our district would be so that we can yell with the appropriate volume at
Sure. Yep.
our assembly members and senators, that would be helpful. Thank you.
So that was my call today, or that she was our answer. And just so you know, both our assembly member and senator are signing on to and pushing for, but neither of them are on budget committee. Right. So they do have limited voice. I think.
Sorry, are pushing for.
Are signing on to a letter to fund both TK and for community funded districts to be funded.
To be fully funded.
For the cost of the TK program as well as the new transportation. I think in terms of further advocacy, identifying members of the budget committee to represent community funded districts would be something to do.
But it wasn't even clear to me how underfunded the mandate is. I assume it's underfunded because that's what they do, but.
Yep.
Be helpful.
That's a brand new one.
Because it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to find out because I don't have the answer right now.
Right. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
As it relates to the building fund, the 25 million, how much of that is the rents from?
Back here. So this revenue that you're seeing
Yeah.
here for building
Oh,
fund, almost all of that is rental income from the 10 site. A little over 2 million is just revenue from the
25, 23. I guess is what we're still holding on. Purchasing the site. I'm just saying, I'm taking 2.3 off.
There should be money there from the
The
city
25.
purchase of the park, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's in there.
Okay, I'm just curious. All right, thank you.
Oh, it's not a question for Randy, it's just a comment. That if you want to call your legislator and complain about the stirs and PERS costs that we incur every year, they're slated to go up by 14%, 20%, numbers like that. And it's a significant amount of money. It's $9 million. Goes slightly down to $8.5 million. I just want to make it clear that I'm not complaining about having, I'm not complaining about I want to pay the teachers. That's not the complaint. The complaint is that any increases that we see in revenue from LCFF are automatically offset by the stirs and PERS. We have no say whatsoever in the stirs and PERS numbers. They're just forced on us. And so it's something the legislatures should know about, that, oh, we're giving you all this money, but you're also taking it away from there.
Yep.
So.
Part of the argument that I read was that $8 billion was in response some to that without them identifying exactly where it needs to do, but the idea of giving a district some flexibility. If, you know, you want to be done with series first, that's how you want to think about it. Right.
So
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's the
if that's
flexibility.
great, if that comes through, I'm happy to take it. I know that Jerry Brown was famous for giving one-time money, telling these people, oh yeah, there's the one-time money, telling those people, there's the one-time money. It was used several times over.
Sure.
And so we have to be careful about that as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's all. All right, finish.
So I'm going to close the public hearing and move on to resolution 21/22-16. Order of election specifications of election order consolidation of compliance.
Right, so in front of you is a resolution essentially to call for an election on November 8th, 2022.
Do we have to?
For, yes, we have to, for 3 seats on this very school board. So present the resolution for the board's consideration.
Any questions or discussion?
We have to accuse ourselves if we're
Um,
for election.
So I actually have a proposal for modifying this resolution, so I want to see if there's support for it. So I think part of our duty for equity is also making service on this board available to as many and manageable for as many members of our community as we can. So in section 5, it talks about the cost of putting a statement in the ballot, which is essentially a prerequisite for running seriously for election. And we are actually one of only 2 of our immediate neighbors who don't subsidize that cost. So putting a 200-word statement on the ballot in the last election, 2020, was $2,800. I expect that cost is probably going to go up. So Palo Alto, Mount Westman, MBLA all pay half of that cost as a way of defraying the sort of upfront cost. So I would like to see us consider that. In addition, although it's not germane to the agenda item we have tonight, we are also just about the only district that pays as poorly as we do. And so I would really like to see us modify our board policies to pay the amount, which is still a pittance, but the amount that's provided for in state law, which is at least enough to hire a babysitter to watch your kids while you attend a meeting, which we don't currently achieve. So, so that throw those out there.
So just to clarify, Brian, that's second.
That's a separate issue.
But that second one, the board bylaw,
Right.
That's in the same vein, though, right?
Yes, very much. Like if I would like somebody who might have to miss work or get childcare or whatever, in order to fulfill the responsibilities of this position to be able to do so. Rather than have to do it.
clarification of what Brian just said. The first point you made about, putting the statement, the ballot.
Yeah.
And the district being half, is that only for incumbents who are running for reelection? Is that for anybody?
No, that would be for anyone. And that would be, I think we can modify this resolution. There's actually a board policy that we don't currently have, we have never adopted, which lays out essentially what is in this resolution as far as that kind of stuff goes. So ultimately, we should probably adopt that. I would advocate for adopting that.
I have a question. Do any districts pay all of it?
Not that I'm aware of. So Mountain View Wisdom pays all but $200. Palo Alto and MBLA pay 50%.
When does this resolution have to be done? By?
Could be done next. We could table this and return it next meeting.
You have good language to offer from there? Sure.
Certainly, I have, so the board policy that sort of overlaps this is board policy 9220. You can certainly look up the policy in the neighboring districts. It's all fairly standardized from what I saw, so we can certainly adopt what, for example, or either MBLA or Mountain View Wisdom, depending on the appetite for taking on cost, are doing. And then the board compensation is board policy 9250. And you can see, basically all of our neighbor districts have variations on boilerplate language, which points to the California Education Code, which sets, if people are interested, it basically sets it sets the maximum compensation for school board members as $240 per month, which given our workload is pretty minimal, like that's maybe minimum wage, depending on how busy we are. And then provides for 5% increases each year, sort of from there. That rate is actually, as far as I can tell, set in like the mid-90s. So I'm sure board compensation varies wildly depending on when boards adopted that starting point and then started accruing inflation.
What focus that on just the one topic, which is the one that's not the compensation piece, which is
Right.
tonight.
Sorry, not in front of us tonight.
Just talk about the one that we're talking about tonight, which is the adoption of the election specification order and taking on the cost of running helping candidates follow election. The only thing I would quote this mention there is our neighboring districts have had problems with one topic, jumping in the election. Lowering the barrier to entry is made that easy across the board for those districts that end up being distracted from the overall business of the board. Advocate that if someone is, and that's their economic status is, they're planning to run for the board, which they would be out, or then of course, like people concerned running with the high school board. Getting attention for people, getting donations, helping fund those costs. If they're going to be a viable candidate. If you're not going to be a viable candidate, and really out to promote a topic, this gives you a short way into that. So I'm kind of, well, I understand your argument for specifically, I'm sure people are different. I want to make sure we're not creating a different problem that we're not ready to experience or handle. If we change these things in a quick motion this cycle. We want to have that conversation moving forward and do it rather than at the last minute. It's a yes. Conversation. Better to do it when we're having to approve, even though I'm concerned about it. That we might want to work against with most. I understand the motivation that you're putting on there. I do think that most candidates that would be viable might be different economic status could get enough news for that.
I think Wikileaks is a affluent person, would do the same thing you're doing. But we could be one issue and have the money to do it. So I feel like it's.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think what I did is when I actually ran through this with the high school board,
Yeah.
we had 3 candidates who wanted to make sure one topic was focused on conversation. They all jumped in. Hearing levels of fluency elected. They just wanted to focus the conversation on their topic. And so I would argue that that is just concerning. I understand what you're saying. There's a lot there. What they come here and make that problem happen. But let's not. And I'm happy to do this conversation next week if you want to oppose to distract them. That would be my concern about us taking on that burden. For, I know we're looking at 18% reserve. Oh, that's money suddenly. Oh, that's great. Let's spend it. But I'm saying let's not spend it in a way that we haven't thought through and a long conversation about.
So I totally get the equity argument, but it's kind of what I was asking, like, who made this percent for, because theoretically, everybody in this census, like all 32,000 people decide to fund. And we have to pay $1,400 for each one of those. I just think that the lesson that I learned having run for the first time 4 years ago is if you are a serious candidate, as much as I personally dislike it, but fundraising is part of being a viable candidate. And I very much be a person to do it. I hate asking people for money. But I really felt strongly that I wanted to serve on this board, and so I kind of had to do what I didn't like to do. Serve. I think I totally understand the others, the other side of it. I just think that careful. And I did see that in the previous election, not in our district, that there was a candidate who ran, was not a serious candidate, and just really trying to disrupt election. So
It is a risk we're taking.
it is exactly. And I don't know how to.
I think what I would ask that we may figure out what sort of direction we may want to go. I'm in support of it. I think that they still have to raise $1,400 or whatever happened is. I think that we're always running the risk. We are 100% always running the risk of one issue. So, whatever the price point. It is our hard work that may, get people and understanding sympathetically, either solving the issue or making them understand why we can't do it. That may make those one issue people not come out of the woodwork, but that is part of our job of what we first strive to do. So I am so.
I think we should consider adding some language. Let's have discussion. Maybe it's only one paragraph, right? Two versions of that.
Well, another viable path. So there's also the compensation, which is not part of what is agendized tonight. I would like to see us consider that next time, so that whoever's considering running will understand what the parameters would be for the compensation of the position. Just to get that done before the summer. And then, I'm not. If we want to get this resolution done, I don't think this is a huge issue on the margin, as people point out in today's. Very few people run serious campaigns without fundraising multiples of this stuff. Anyway, between yard signs and other stuff we have to do. So I'm not opposed to going ahead with this, but I would like us to consider board policy. Consider making both of those changes. I leave it up to the president.
Sorry, but
According to what you just said, we don't have best, right? That's
Correct.
So if you want to come back with, sounds like there's at least 3 of those support the idea of amending this. Would be like,
two early reads.
yeah, so 2 options for us to review. With that. And then in terms of the paying us to show up for more meetings. And show up on that personally, but I guess we need to have language there for inspiration.
Since we talked about elections, we need to start the process of considering district area elections. So that way we are covered.
If that's what the board wants to do.
And we, is it the sensible that we want to have? We want to approve this resolution. Plus have another item on the future board agenda before we break. That covers amending it to, well, potentially amending it for and also board compensation. Elections. Yeah, is that?
Too much harder because it takes a lot of demographic information.
What I'm asking for there is not that we start this process. My understanding is that if we have started the process, then we have protected ourselves against.
We have an 18-month roadway for it, and it's not doing, I don't think we should do it right at the beginning of this.
Right. So, yeah, I think switching the areas, I think is, that's on topic of what we've got agendas tonight, so I don't want to get too much into
No,
discussion.
I agree. No, I wasn't discussing it. I said, I wanted to sense. I got a sense the board didn't want to get it. Finish this conversation first. Okay, so I'd like to move that we approve agenda item. Resolution 21/2016, order of election certification. Consolidation request. As presented.
Can I ask a question before we do it? I'm not really sure what is going on here. Because are we supposed to approve this resolution, or are we gonna do it at the next meeting when we talk about the 2 different versions of the, one with that language, one without?
So the point of order right now, Vladimir's made a motion to approve this as presented.
Listen,
So there's either going to be a second on that or not.
Do I get to explain? So I was followed up on. Well, I made a suggestion, but resolution for the consider.
Well, I think, in my opinion, if we approve this resolution tonight, then any discussion of changes would be for not the 2022 election, but would be for some 2024 election.
So, okay, all right.
Because I think otherwise it's just.
And I think that's the direction of the staff would be come back to see what she said, the day's resolution. You want to do it, maybe from the balance. Okay. And you can all think a little bit more. That's right.
Sorry. And then next week's meeting, is that what is the board compensation complete separate?
Yeah. Separate
not-
topic, I can bring that forward by law. To the meeting.
Personally, I would like to see a possible change.
Yep.
Given the ongoing changes. Well, we approve it in August. We'll take it back to the next election.
No,
No, no,
well,
no, the board
it depends how it's,
compensation.
it depends how it's written. So,
You can take it, it could take it, right?
But it could also be written to take effect after the following election,
Right.
which is, so it sounds like there's direction to write it that way.
We'll do that.
That was sort of maybe the budget.
Right?
Board policy update.
So bring to you, board bylaw 9122. This is the board secretary. This is an update of the language since we have the other positions updated. The president, vice president, clerk, this two needs to be updated. This just clarifies the language of select board as the board secretary, which is me or my T. So I bring that to you for your consideration. Again, this is the first read. If there's any comments on it, I'll take them. Otherwise, it'll appear next week.
Any salary associated?
Nothing, there's-
Yeah.
No,
No additional.
no addition. Other duties is assigned.
Board administration comments.
Just one, I wanted to let you know that last week we had our lovely new teacher colloquium. Our special end of year event where we invite our first and second year teachers who are participating in induction to get their credential cleared. It was a fantastic event. They really share their learning, their experiences as teachers in our district. Probably my favorite event of the year. It's good. Actually, the second update. We have heard, speaking of induction, we did finally hear from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and we are going for our approval of our program on June 29th. So we are really excited, and
It should just be
I believe it will just be a lovely formality.
we'll have it in place for next year.
Yeah, but Greg Drummond and Sarah Langer have done extensive work back and forth, really making sure that our program is criteria, and that's what we want to do for our teachers. So it's great.
I guess we'll see you all next week.
Larry?
I can't remember if I attended the CSBA budget update.
It was after our last.
Prior.
Yeah.
It was prior to our.
No.
I made it to Almond, Burlington, and this for Eric concert. And also some differences. It was good to see some differences. I also went to the How New Homes Can Increase Enrollment meeting done by San Francisco, Silicon Valley at home. And that was interesting. It was like basically, hey, advocate for housing so that you can get more enrollment. As you may have noticed, the enrollment's going down. So that was interesting. And then I also helped together our RFEP celebration. And it's for classified students. Went from English language learners to fluent English students. And it was
I attended the final DLAC meeting of the year, which was interesting. Listened to the high school board's discussion on ethnic studies, which I also found interesting. They're piloting a new course in the fall. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And then actually helped run an event at the Santa Rita Science Olympiad, which was a great fun event, as always. So nice to have it back after a 2-year hiatus.
I went to the same budget workshop as part of year, the California Latino School Board Association, a separate one, so I listened to that. Can't hear about the budget too many times. League of Women Voters Education Committee also talked about the budget with Dr. Dumont, so lots of budget stuff.
I guess bang it down one more time. We are.
Those ones that,